Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of PRI Talk. I'm here to do another 5-minute recruiting episode with you guys. Today we are answering the question, which college coach should I email? Okay, great question, simple question, and I think it's one of those things where I feel like athletes and parents focus on this piece, and I don't think it's quite as nearly I don't want to say it's not important, because it is important who you email, right? But I don't think it's as big of a deal as everyone wants to make it. Okay, so which college coach should you email? In general, it doesn't always matter. Okay, a lot of these college coaches have systems set in place. All these programs have systems set in place in terms of who gets filtered, all the recruiting stuff. Okay, maybe I have 2 assistants, or maybe I just have 1 assistant, and I'm the head coach, and so I'm going to send recruiting emails to the coach to filter. Sometimes both coaches, the head coach and the assistant, are going to go through the emails that they get, combine them all somewhere in a database or on a spreadsheet or on their whiteboard or whatever, to compile all the kind of information that they are getting, the athletes that they're getting. They're sharing film back and forth, right? For the most part, these are coaches that have offices literally in the same room. If not, I mean, they're 2 feet away from each other. So they're always going to be communicating. The staffs that are good at the recruiting and good at their jobs in that way are always going to be communicating. And so it doesn't necessarily always matter who you email. Now, there are college coaches out there, and I've said this as long as I've been on this side. There's some who are really, really good at this recruiting stuff, and then there's some that aren't as good at this recruiting stuff, okay? There's college coaches that are going to respond really regularly, have a really good notion of what they need, and respond correctly to someone like myself or you as an athlete if they can, things like that. There's other college coaches that aren't going to do that as well. And so sometimes it's finding which coach has a better rate of response than the other. And that's all information that, I can communicate to athletes or have communicated to athletes and said, I see their emails go out and I say, hey, you need to be emailing this coach versus this one, things like that. So, but in general, I think for the most part, you email one coach or email the other, someone's reading it, someone's getting it, someone's clicking on the film. Okay. The other thing that I'll say about this is I don't think it's necessary to email every single coach on the staff. I just don't. I think it makes the email look a little bit messy. It makes it really wordy because you got to say, hey, Coach Smith and Coach Jones and Coach whatever in the title, and it's just a lot of stuff. And so I typically try to push athletes in a certain way, especially if it's a school that I know and a coach that I know really well. This one handles the recruiting. This one maybe doesn't as much. And sometimes I honestly get almost a better response rate from head coaches than I do assistants. It just depends. And I think the other thing too to pay attention to when you go on the website, if they have an assistant coach that maybe has an email, but there's nothing in the bio, I personally try not to email those coaches because if you don't have enough, support in your assistant coach to even write a bio about them and who they are and what they do, but you're still giving an email, chances are that person maybe isn't full-time or doesn't have as much of a load. Maybe they have a load with something else in the program. So I typically don't email. If there's an assistant coach that has an email address but nothing in their bio, I typically don't email that assistant. I email the head coach, and I usually get a pretty good response rate out of that. And typically smaller schools as well, the head coach is doing a lot of the recruiting anyway, and so they are taking those emails. So I don't necessarily think it matters all the time who you email. I think that ideally these staffs are working really closely and together to compile all the information. And so you email the head coach, the assistant coach is going to get the email. You email the assistant coach. If the assistant coach likes you, then the head coach is going to get your film, right? So they're all working together ideally. And like I said, the last part would be figure out which coach is the one doing a lot of the responding. Sometimes it's based on your graduating class. Sometimes it's based on the part of the country that you're in, things like that. Every program is going to do things a little bit differently. But I don't think it's necessarily a huge deal to where you worry about which coach you're responding to. ask me and I can give you a little bit more info on maybe which coach you should be emailing. And then try not to, as best you can, put every single coach in the email that's on staff. You're just filling up someone's inbox that is going to forward it on to someone else anyway. So that's the answer to that question. Hopefully it helps. If you have any other questions, or if you have a recruiting question that you would like me to answer for you, please let me know and I will get that done for you guys. All right, thanks. We'll see you next time.